The spotlight freezes. 60,000 voices fall silent. Michael Jackson stops mid-verse. The drunk man on stage stumbles forward, pointing, shouting something incoherent. Security rushes. The crowd roars with anger. But then Michael does something no one expects. He raises his hand. Stop security. Steps toward the heckler. And in that moment, Wembley Stadium holds its breath. What happened next would become legend. But to understand this moment, we need to go back. Back to July 16, 1988. London. The Bad World Tour. The most anticipated concert of the decade. The day had started like any other show day for Michael Jackson. Backstage rituals. Sound checks. The familiar pre-show tension that came with performing for 60,000 people. But this night felt different. There was electricity in the air, an energy that veteran crew members couldn't quite place. In his dressing room, Michael sat quietly, as he always did before shows. Sequined glove on the table. Military jacket pressed and waiting. He wasn't just preparing for a performance, he was preparing for communion. That's what concerts meant to him, a spiritual exchange between performer and audience, where music became medicine and entertainment became healing. The opening acts had finished. The crowd was restless, chanting his name. Michael. 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 The sound echoed through the concrete tunnels beneath Wembley, reaching his ears like a prayer. This wasn't just about entertainment. This was about connection. About touching souls. About proving that music could bridge any divide. At 8:47 p.m., Michael Jackson took the stage. The eruption was seismic. 60,000 people on their feet, screaming, crying, fainting. The opening beats of "Wanna Be Startin' Somethin'" filled the stadium, and Michael moved like liquid electricity. Every step calculated, every gesture carrying meaning. This was mastery in motion. 3 songs in, during "The Way You Make Me Feel," something shifted. Michael was in his element, spinning, gliding, commanding the stage with supernatural precision. The crowd was completely under his spell. But then, from somewhere in the front section, came a disruption. A man. Clearly intoxicated. Shouting over the music. At first, security ignored him. There's always someone trying to get attention at concerts. But he got louder. More aggressive. And then he did the unthinkable. He somehow broke through the barrier and stumbled onto the stage. Michael Jackson stopped singing mid-sentence. The arena fell into death-like silence. This was the moment that would test everything Michael believed about humanity, about forgiveness, about the power of music to heal even the most broken souls. The heckler stood there, swaying, pointing at Michael, his voice cutting through the sudden quiet. Words slurred with alcohol and anger. Profanity mixed with challenges. The kind of confrontation that would destroy most performers' composure. Security was already moving, ready to tackle the intruder. 60,000 people rose to their feet in protective fury. But Michael Jackson raised his hand. Stop. He looked at this man, this broken, angry, lost soul, and saw something others didn't. Pain. Confusion. A human being crying out in the only way he knew how. The king of pop, the master of the stage, the entertainer who could command armies with a whisper, made a choice that night that revealed his true character. He stepped toward the heckler. The crowd gasped. Security hesitated. The band stopped playing. In that moment, Michael Jackson stripped away all the glamour, all the spectacle, all the performance, and became simply Michael, a man reaching out to another man in pain. "What's your name?" Michael asked, his voice carrying across the stadium through the microphone. The heckler, caught off guard by the gentleness, mumbled something incomprehensible. "I can't hear you," Michael said, stepping closer. "Tell me your name." "Dave," the man finally managed. "My name's Dave." Michael nodded, as if this was the most important introduction he'd ever received. "Hello, Dave. I'm Michael. What's wrong? What's hurting you tonight?" 60,000 people watched in stunned silence as their idol, their king, treated this disruptive drunk like a friend in need. Dave broke down. Right there on stage, in front of the world, his anger crumbled into tears. He tried to speak, to explain, but the words wouldn't come. Just sobs. Just raw, human pain spilling out under the brightest lights in the world. Subscribe and comment below, because what Michael did next would change this man's life forever. Behind the scenes, Michael Jackson was moving with a determination that surprised everyone on his team. The crew backstage watched monitors in disbelief. This wasn't in the script. This wasn't planned. This was pure Michael Jackson, the man who sent anonymous gifts to children's hospitals, who quietly paid for strangers' medical bills, who saw beyond the surface of every human being he encountered. Michael reached into his pocket. He always carried small tokens, not expensive jewelry or cash, but meaningful objects. Tonight, he pulled out a simple silver cross. Not worth much monetarily, but priceless in its symbolism. "Dave," Michael said softly, "I want you to have this. Not because you interrupted my show, but because I can see you're carrying something heavy. Let this remind you that you're not alone." The heckler looked at the cross, then at Michael, then at the 60,000 people watching. His face transformed. The anger was gone. The aggression had melted. In its place was wonder, gratitude, and something even more precious, hope. "I'm sorry," Dave whispered. "I'm so sorry. My wife, she left me today. 20 years. I didn't know where else to go." Michael placed his hand on Dave's shoulder. "I understand," he said. "Pain makes us do things we don't recognize. But you're here now. We're all here now. And that means something." The silence in Wembley was profound. 60,000 people witnessing not a concert, but a moment of pure human connection. Cameras captured it. Journalists scribbled notes. But what they were really documenting was the heart of Michael Jackson, not the performer, not the celebrity, but the human being who believed in redemption. "Can you help me sing something?" Michael asked Dave. "Can you help me show everyone here what it means to heal?" Dave nodded, tears still streaming down his face. Michael turned to the band. "Start, Man in the Mirror, from the beginning." But here's the incredible part of this story. The part no one expected. As the opening chords of Man in the Mirror filled Wembley Stadium, something magical happened. Michael began to sing, but instead of his usual polished performance, this was raw, emotional, real. He kept one arm around Dave's shoulders, supporting him, including him, making him part of the moment. When they reached the chorus, Michael held the microphone toward Dave. "Sing with me," he whispered. Dave's voice was broken, off-key, barely audible. But he sang. And as he sang, something extraordinary occurred. One by one, people in the audience began to stand. Not in anger anymore, but in support. They began to sing along. Quietly at first, then louder. "I'm starting with the Man in the Mirror / I'm asking him to change his ways." 60,000 voices joined in. Security guards sang. Camera operators sang. Journalists put down their pens and sang. The entire stadium became a choir, united in a moment of collective healing. They weren't just singing a song, they were participating in a transformation. Dave looked out at the crowd, the same crowd that had been ready to tear him apart moments before, and saw acceptance. Forgiveness. Love. The cross in his hand caught the stage lights, reflecting tiny rainbows across his tear-stained face. Michael continued the song, but this wasn't a performance anymore. This was a ceremony. A baptism. A demonstration of the power that music has to heal, to unite, to transform even the most broken situations into something beautiful. As the song reached its climax, Michael made one final gesture that would seal this moment in history. He removed his iconic fedora, the hat that had become synonymous with his image, and placed it on Dave's head. The crowd erupted. Not in anger, not in confusion, but in pure joy. They cheered for Dave. They cheered for Michael. They cheered for humanity itself. Dave stood there, wearing the hat of the King of Pop, holding a simple silver cross, surrounded by 60,000 people who had just witnessed the greatest performance of Michael Jackson's career, not because of his dancing or singing, but because of his humanity. Share this story and subscribe, because this moment changed everything about how the world saw Michael Jackson. When security finally, gently, escorted Dave off stage, he was a different man. The anger was gone. The pain was still there. Heartbreak doesn't disappear in an instant, but now it was wrapped in hope. In purpose. In the knowledge that he had been seen, truly seen, by one of the most famous people in the world. Michael returned to his performance, but the energy had shifted completely. Every song that followed was infused with the emotion of that moment. The audience sang louder, danced harder, loved deeper. They had just witnessed something beyond entertainment. They had seen the soul of an artist who truly understood that his gift was meant to heal. After the show, Michael didn't just go back to his hotel. He made sure Dave was okay. Had his security team check on him. Made sure he got home safely. 3 days later, Dave received a phone call. Michael wanted to know how he was doing. Not for publicity. Not for cameras. Just because he cared. Dave kept that fedora and that cross for the rest of his life. He never sold them, never displayed them for fame. They sat on his bedside table, reminders of the night a stranger showed him what unconditional love looked like. When Dave remarried 2 years later, he wore the cross at his wedding. He told everyone who would listen about the night Michael Jackson saved his life. The incident was filmed, but Michael requested that the footage not be widely distributed during his lifetime. He didn't want Dave to be embarrassed. He didn't want to exploit someone's pain for publicity. Even in his triumph, even in his greatest moment of public grace, Michael protected the dignity of a broken man who had tried to hurt him. But the story lived on in the hearts of everyone who was there. 60,000 witnesses to the power of compassion. 60,000 people who learned that night that true strength isn't about fighting back, it's about lifting others up. Michael Jackson died in 2009, but that moment at Wembley in 1988 became part of his eternal legacy. Not the moonwalk. Not the sequin glove. Not the record sales or the awards. The moment he stopped being a superstar and became a human being reaching out to another human being in pain. Dave kept that promise to change. He got sober. He rebuilt his life. He volunteered at addiction recovery centers. And he always told the same story, the night Michael Jackson showed him that everyone deserves a second chance, that everyone is worth saving, that music really can heal the world. The silver cross and the fedora were buried with Dave when he passed in 2019. In his will, he requested that this story be told, so that people would know the truth about Michael Jackson, not the tabloid version, not the controversy, but the man who saw past anger to find pain, who responded to hatred with love, who proved that the greatest performance of all is simply being human. But there's one more piece to this story that wasn't discovered until years later. In Dave's personal belongings, his daughter found a handwritten letter, not from Michael, but to Michael. Dave had written it the morning after the concert, but never sent it. In shaky handwriting, it read, "Dear Michael, you'll never read this, but I need to write it. Last night you didn't just save me from embarrassment. You saved me from myself. I came to your show ready to end everything. The pain was too much. But when you looked at me, really looked at me, I saw something I'd forgotten existed. Hope. Thank you for reminding me that I'm human, not just broken." That letter was framed and donated to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, not as a display piece, but kept in their archives, a testament to the power of one moment, one choice, one act of radical compassion. Michael Jackson's assistant later revealed that Michael had asked about Dave multiple times over the years. When Michael learned of Dave's sobriety, his remarriage, his volunteer work, he smiled and said simply, he always had it in him. He just needed to remember. The ripple effects of that night continued long after both men were gone. Dave's daughter became a music therapist, directly inspired by the healing she witnessed in her father. 3 of the people Dave helped in recovery centers went on to help others, creating an unbroken chain of compassion that stretches back to that moment when Michael Jackson chose love over ego. Concert security protocols were quietly changed after that night, not to prevent future interruptions, but to handle them with more humanity. Michael's example became an unofficial training model: see the person, not the problem. That's the Michael Jackson the world should remember. The man who stopped a show for a stranger. The king of pop who gave his crown to a broken man and taught 60,000 people the meaning of grace. The artist who understood that sometimes the greatest performance happens when you stop performing and start being human.